Good evening, everyone. Once again, it is the Dread Pirate, and today I have another review of something shocking and terrifying. Another horror movie review. Once again, in preparation for Halloween, several months in advance, I've been enjoying some delightful, wonderful horror movies, low-budget horror movies that can be found in your little dollar store bulk packs. This one comes from the 25 horror movies pack. This is one made by Echo Bridge Home Entertainment. Echo Bridge, the seal of quality. Echo Bridge is great. They have pretty much a lot of, I think, public domain and low budget stuff that are all come in these big collections. And this one's a really good one. This one's got 25 fun little movies. I mean, not everything here's a winner. What in here is crap? Yeah, Backwoods Bloodbath, The Curse of the Hodag, I think it's called. Yeah, that's a shitty movie. I kind of like it, but it's shitty. But today, no, I want to talk to you about one of the best movies in this 25 pack. A little diamond in the rough. The reason I check out things like this too, to be, exposed to lesser known indie horror movies that people may not be aware of. This one is called All God's Children. No, wait, no. I fucked that up again. Okay, this is the second recording. I already screwed that up before. I'm not recording again, folks. After all that, no, not All God's Children. No. Today's movie is called All God's Creatures. All God's Creatures. That's what this movie is, and it is. So All God's Creatures is really it is a character piece more than anything else. You could make the case that this is a slasher movie because it's about a serial killer, and he does kill people and there's blood. But it's not really a slasher movie. This is really just a character piece, where we just kind of get to know this guy. I really like this movie. All God's Creatures is basically, for those of you who are familiar with Dexter, both the novels and the TV show, this movie seems very heavily inspired by Dexter, where it's about a serial killer. And we get to know him very, very personally, complete with inner monologuing. The difference between John of All God's Creatures, as opposed to dearly devoted Dexter, is that Dexter has a conscience. If there's again, one of the big appeals of Dexter is that it's the character is basically a vigilante. He's a person with homicidal urges who attempts to control them by following a code and only going after other murderers. And we get to know him. We get to hear his internal monologue. We understand about him as a character. This movie basically foregoes the whole, vigilante, having a conscience aspect of things. No. John of All God's Creatures is just a murderer. He's a murderer who has homicidal urges and likes to kill hookers. But we actually do get to know him. We do get to basically get some internal monologues. We get to know him as a person. He's very similar to Dexter in many ways, largely because he's like Dexter. He's a very clean monster. There's a lot of influence here that I can see similarities to the Dexter series. He does the thing where he basically when he lures his victims home on the regards that he's going to sleep with them for money, knocks them out. Then either kills or dismember them after basically putting plastic all over the place so it's easy to clean up. He's kind of obsessive compulsive in terms of cleaning because he doesn't want to get caught. And also, much like Dexter, he puts on a facade and appears to be a very nice, handsome guy on the outside. So that's John of All God's Creatures. There's other disturbing things about him, though, too. There's other differences. Is like where he has a little trophy room of various parts of his victims who he's kept and whatnot. So one of the major differences with, John as opposed to Dexter is that John is genuinely a monster. He's genuinely a bad person. But what's interesting is that whereas Dexter focuses on basically a person with homicidal tendencies and kind of essentially a serial killer, but is trying to control those urges by being a good person. In the case of John, we basically we connect with John because John regardless of the fact that he's a bad person, he is in touch with his humanity. There's a human, compassionate side to him that we wind up seeing and we wind up exploring through the course of the movie. All God's Creatures at the end of the day is essentially a love story. Basically, John is out happily, pretending to be a barista at a Starbucks by day, murdering hookers at night, admiring Ted Bundy, and hoping that one day he could hit the 30 mark for all the people he's murdered, or perhaps higher. You got to have goals in life, people. You got to have goals. When one day he meets a woman known as Lori. Lori is a young woman running away from home, who basically is providing for herself by working as a prostitute. And she walks into his coffee shop one day and turns his life completely upside down. Essentially, this story is basically, it's a character piece and a love story. It's basically about this serial killer whose normal interactions with women are, stabby, stab, stab. And then actually finds a healthy human relationship and finds a woman that he winds up falling in love with, which turns his life upside down. He initially intends to kill her and do something bad to her, but he wind up just can't bring himself to do it. We also get to know more about Lori. Lori comes from an abusive home life. She used to live with a younger sister and their stepfather, who in addition to being an alcoholic, horribly abuses the both of them. What appears to be emotionally, verbally, physically, and sexually. So she gets away from that home life and basically is trying to earn enough money in order to basically get her younger sister out of harm's way, and winds up finding John as a result. Unfortunately, things don't necessarily work out for her younger sister, but then it winds up basically. What's interesting about it is, though, even though John is a bad guy, he's a bad human being. He winds up having kind of a higher calling, as basically once the abuse that Laurie's sister is suffering gets completely out of control, there is something genuinely good that he can do with his unsavory habits. And he comes to Laurie's aid in order to basically do something good with his murderous tendencies. And that's all the movie I really want to share. I don't want to actually spoil the whole thing. This is a nice little indie slasher character piece. It's very well shot, very well acted. It's got a very good soundtrack, very nice, moody, creepy soundtrack. And essentially our principal characters would be... What's interesting about it, I was thinking about it today, basically the title itself, All God's Creatures. This movie truly is about all God's creatures. All of God's fucked up, sad, twisted little creatures that don't know what to do in their lives. We, of course, have John and his urges. We have Laurie, who debases herself for money. We have her younger sister, who is horribly victimized and abused. And then we even have Sean, the stepdad, who is essentially the villain of the movie. What's interesting about it, and I think part of the reason why this movie works for me, is that basically, regardless of the fact that there's a lot of bad people in this movie, we get to know them as people. John may be a genuinely bad person, but his love for Laurie and this relationship that they find with each other, they show that even a terrible person can have the need for human companionship. Something that kind of reminds me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 2. Part of what we liked about Spike and Drusilla as villains was their love for each other was so strong. And we kind of rooted for them in a way. And regardless of the fact that basically John loves stabbing women, you kind of root for him. You kind of root for him regardless of the fact he's a bad guy. And even Sean, the abusive stepdad, basically is, struggles with his alcoholism and has a very nice scene at one point where he's talking to a coworker and asking how he basically gets through the day. And it just shows that basically all these people in this movie are just kind of lost and fucked up in some shape or form. Another thing, too, is that basically Laurie, as a sex worker, as a prostitute, I think another example of that is pretty much anytime we see her, with someone other than John. When we see her working as a prostitute, I noticed something in particular that... And spoiler alert for this if you don't want to hear it, but I do want to go into this a little bit. Each person that she winds up sleeping with as part of her profession during the course of the film is really fucked up in some way. There's a kind of a delivery guy who is telling her this weird story about a bunch of eggs in a carton he was trying to deliver that were rolling around, and he's just going on and on about the eggs, and they're rolling and rolling and rolling and not sleeping with her. Not sleeping with her, just basically dealing with the stress of the situation until finally she's like, are we going to do this or what? And she gives him a hand job. There's some weirdo who calls her up and starts saying a bunch of obscene, fucked up shit he wants to do to her, so she yells at him. And finally, my personal favorite, and I think probably one of the best scenes in the movie, she gets a call to sleep with a guy who's an elderly gay man. And he calls her up in hysterics because apparently he's not only gay, but he's married. His husband has been cheating on him. So when he calls her over, he calls up Laurie to sleep with her for the purposes of cheating on his husband, who cheated on him, just kind of in revenge. And he's basically just, instead of fucking her, he's just screaming all about how, oh, there is no gay marriage, there is no gay marriage. Like, talk about commitment and marriage. Until finally she just tells him to shut up, and you're going to fuck me or what? And they start fucking. And what's interesting in all three of those scenes is just how each person is just, that comes to her is just so desperate and screwed up and demented. It's like, I mean, I think there really is kind of a nice little atheist message in this movie of just all God's creatures, all beautiful and whatnot. Look at all of us, how fragile and twisted we can potentially be. It's at the end of the day, it's basically, I can tell the people making this movie just wanted to tell a really good character horror piece, a story basically done from the perspective of a serial killer. But you can definitely draw. They definitely have a nice artistic touch to it. Movie is very beautifully crafted, and you can see a little bit of a deeper meaning and themes within it, and it's very good. I cannot recommend All God's Creatures enough. This is an excellent indie horror movie. It's a great little character piece. I definitely recommend it. You can find it. It is available at. If you can find it pretty much in any one of these box sets with Echo Bridge that contains it. This one is the 25 horror movies over 35 hours. There's a big zombie lady on the cover of it. If you want a visual for the. Which I don't have right now, sorry. Things are, again, there's a reason I keep on doing still shots. Last couple of the videos I've been doing. But, yeah, you can find this on Echo Bridge. It's Echo Bridge apparently has the rights to distribute this movie. All God's Creatures is an excellent horror film. Check it out. Once again, this is the Dread Pirate giving you a horror review, go out there, check out All God's Creatures, and most importantly, stay scared, folks. Oh, and looking through the scene again, I think the guy I thought was actually a gay guy is actually, I think he's just a big schlubby guy who's got a lot of money, and he might have some conservative viewpoints, so he's like screaming about like, oh, who cares about he's screaming, instead of sleeping with her, he's basically screaming around like, oh, who cares about the environment, and who cares about gay people, it's just like, who cares about their gay marriage, fuck their gay marriage. So I think he's not really a gay guy who's trying to get back at his boyfriend. He's really just kind of a schlubby guy who's an a-hole and, just has trouble getting a woman without his money, and fortunately he has a lot of money so he can get laid. But, yeah, it's been a while since I've seen this movie, so it's, it's kind of neat. I think a couple scenes I may have misinterpreted the first time I viewed them. Anyway, again, All God's Creatures is a great movie. Go check it out. I'm done. Have a good night, folks. Actually, before I go, folks, I'm watching the movie again, and yeah, all right. So the prostitute love interest of All God's Creatures is not actually named Laura. Her name is Delia, and she her alias for when she's basically hooking, the name she puts out, on like the back pages and whatnot, is actually Lila. So I don't know. I'm retarded, folks. I'm retarded. It's been a while since I've seen this film, but I remember. I've seen this movie a long time ago. I'm just kind of rewatching it right now. And again, it's really good. Go check out All God's Creatures. It's really awesome. So once again, this is the Dread Pirate saying, stay scared. And I'm sorry I'm retarded. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later with, I don't know, a role-playing game, a review, me complaining about something. Not James Gunn. We're not talking about James Gunn for a while. We're not doing that. You have a great night, folks.